The peaceful suburban neighborhood had always been a place where neighbors greeted each other with smiles, and the lawns were trimmed to perfection. For the residents of Elmwood Heights, life revolved around community events, HOA meetings, and the unspoken understanding that things would be peaceful if everyone followed the rules. I had always found solace in the familiarity of my surroundings. But nothing could have prepared me for the escalating tension between me and the HOA. For years I had tried to live quietly, respecting the rules and enjoying my space. But things changed when I became a person with disabilities, and my life was transformed by my service dog, Finn. Finn was more than just a companion, he was my lifeline. With his training, I regained a sense of independence I hadn't had in years. He was there when I needed assistance, whether it was retrieving an item from across the room, helping me with mobility, or providing emotional support during difficult times. The HOA, led by a particularly overzealous woman known as Karen, had always been known for enforcing the rules with an iron fist. But things began to change when Karen became personally involved in issues that weren't her business. It started with small complaints, minor inconveniences about lawn care, and the occasional misunderstanding over noise levels. But soon, Karen's attention turned to my service dog. She questioned his presence in the neighborhood. She claimed that service dogs didn't belong in such a pristine environment. She began to approach me with snide comments, subtly pressuring me to keep Finn out of sight. To her, my service dog was an eyesore disruption to her perfectly manicured version of what the neighborhood should be. At first, I brushed off her comments. I told myself that her opinion didn't matter. But when she made an official complaint to the HOA board, it was clear she wasn't going to let it go. The tension reached a boiling point when I received a letter from the HOA threatening fines unless Finn was kept indoors. The letter stated that service dogs were only permitted in certain areas despite federal law clearly stating otherwise. Karen, it seemed, had taken it upon herself to enforce her personal rules and expectations on the entire community. I began to document each interaction with Karen, keeping a log of her harassment and actions against my rights. I knew that things would escalate, but I had no idea just how far Karen was willing to go to make my life miserable. That's when it happened. One hot summer afternoon, as Finn and I were taking our usual walk through the neighborhood, I saw her approaching. I could already tell by the look on her face that something was wrong. Asterisk, it was a typical afternoon in Elmwood Heights. The sun was high, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and the birds were chirping peacefully in the distance. Finn and I were walking along the familiar route, enjoying the cool breeze as we passed by the rows of neat homes. Finn, ever the attentive service dog, kept pace with me, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. His calm demeanor made it easy for me to forget the increasing tension I'd been feeling with Karen in the HOA. As we reached the corner of the street, I spotted her. Karen was standing near her front lawn, hands on her hips, her eyes fixed on Finn and me. There was something about her posture, something that told me this wasn't going to be a casual encounter. I stopped walking, Finn immediately sitting at my side, his body language alert. I could feel the knot in my stomach tighten. She called out to me in that condescending tone she often used. "You know," Karen began, "you're really not supposed to let that dog roam around here. It's a nuisance. It's against the rules." Her words stung, but I had learned to keep my composure. I had dealt with her before, and I wasn't about to let her get under my skin. Finn is a service dog, and he has every right to be here. "I'm following the law," I replied firmly, making sure she understood that I wasn't backing down. But Karen wasn't interested in listening. She was too focused on her own beliefs to consider the truth. "No, you don't understand," she snapped. "I've had enough of this. People are complaining. You need to keep that dog out of sight." Before I could respond, Karen reached into her bag and pulled out a canister of spray. It happened so quickly, I didn't even have time to react. Pointed the can at Finn and sprayed him directly in the face. The dog recoiled, barking in confusion as the substance hit him. I froze, my heart racing as I watched the scene unfold. Finn, always so calm, was now agitated and disoriented. Mind raced as I realized what had just happened. Karen had sprayed Finn with an unknown substance, one that could harm him. "Karen, what the hell are you doing?" shouted, rushing to Finn's side. The officers, who had been parked nearby, heard the commotion and immediately sprang into action. Karen stood there, still holding the spray can, her face a mixture of defiance and satisfaction. "It's a harmless repellent," she said, though her voice lacked any conviction. "He's just a dog. I won't have him disturbing the peace." I knelt down beside Finn, trying to comfort him. "You've gone too far," I whispered to the dog, who was now whimpering in pain. The officers were closing in, their expressions a mixture of concern and disbelief. One of them, a seasoned officer with a calm demeanor, approached Karen. The officers moved swiftly, circling Karen as they assessed the situation. Finn was still disoriented, his body trembling as I continued to soothe him. I could feel my hands shaking as I tried to make sure he was okay. In the back of my mind, I knew that Karen had just made a huge mistake. What she had done wasn't just an act of cruelty, it was a federal crime. Attacking a service animal, especially with a substance that could harm it, was punishable by law. "Ma'am, you need to step back," one of the officers said firmly to Karen. "What you've done here is a crime. You're not allowed to harm a service animal." Karen froze, her face draining of color. The reality of what she had just done was beginning to sink in. She had expected the usual neighborhood confrontation, but now things were different. The police were involved, and they weren't about to let her get away with this. "That dog has rights," the officer continued. "Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you can't just go around spraying service animals. Do you understand the gravity of the situation?" Karen's defiance began to falter as the words hit her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The officers stood their ground, their authority unquestionable. The officer turned to me, his voice softening. "Are you all right? Is your dog okay?" I nodded, though my heart was still racing. "He's shaken up, but I think he'll be okay." "I'm more concerned about what Karen did to him." The officers turned their attention back to Karen, who now seemed to be shrinking under their gaze. She was no longer the confident, self-assured woman who had once dominated the neighborhood. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. "You have no right to treat a service animal like that," the officer continued. "This is a federal crime, and we'll be reporting this incident." Karen's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "I didn't mean to harm the dog. It's just a mistake," she sputtered. The officer was unmoved. "The law doesn't care about your intentions, ma'am. What you did was illegal. Now, we'll be filing a report, and you'll be hearing from the authorities." Karen stood there, frozen, as the officers moved to file their report. She was now facing consequences that she hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, I kept my attention on Finn, who was starting to calm down, his breathing steadying. But the damage had already been done, and Karen's actions would haunt her for a long time to come. The days that followed the incident were a whirlwind of emotions. The police report had been filed, and Karen was facing serious legal repercussions. The neighborhood was buzzing with gossip. Some people took Karen's side, but the majority of the residents knew what she had done was wrong. The HOA, once so eager to side with her, had now been forced to reassess their stance. They could no longer ignore the fact that Karen's behavior had crossed a line. Finn and I spent the next few days recovering from the traumatic event. Although the physical effects of the spray wore off quickly, the emotional toll was harder to shake. Finn was still cautious around strangers, and I could see the wariness in his eyes whenever someone approached. But we both knew that we would heal in time. As for Karen, she learned the hard way that no one, no matter how much they believed in their own self-righteousness, was above the law. The consequences of her actions were severe. She was banned from having any interaction with service animals, and the community no longer saw her as the neighborhood leader she once was. In the end, the incident with Karen was a stark reminder that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's necessary. My service dog and I were more resilient than ever, and together we would continue to face whatever challenges came our way.